So I'm here on this gorgeous, it's still a bit warm, July day, very close to my birthday, to talk to you a little bit about Patreon. Odds are pretty good if you're watching this video and you didn't just hit the stop button that you know what Patreon is, and that you know I'm on it, and that you care what I have to say next. If you're already backing me on Patreon, this is not necessarily directed at you. But listen anyway, because it might be pertinent to your interests. Why should you back me on Patreon? Well, I'll tell you why you should probably not back me on Patreon. You probably should not back me on Patreon if you expect me to put out content every week on time for the foreseeable future. Because I've never been good at that. I've been podcasting since 2008-ish, 9, something like that. Never been good at the regular thing. This is not a surprise to anybody who's known me for more than a month. Not for lack of trying. You shouldn't back me on Patreon because you want to get something for that money every month. You might, and I hope that you will get something. You shouldn't back me on Patreon because you don't have any expectations and you just want to give money to a friend. Although I appreciate that. My hope is that you have some expectation or desire to see me create good works of fiction. And that's what I'm doing with the money that you guys send me every month, and that you guys who are listening, watching, potentially will send me every month. Here's why you should back me on Patreon. Right now I am paying Veronica Jaguar, who is an amazing voice actor, to produce audiobook versions of the first 2 Ginny Dare books. You should back me on Patreon because I have to send money to editors and cover designers so that I don't end up with less than ideal results like I did for my first 2 publishing attempts. And so that books will actually sell. You should back me on Patreon because you want to support an independent creator who really wants to put out good stuff. And I'll tell you what else Patreon does, besides just the obvious help me make money to put things out. And that is, by giving me money over on Patreon, you are encouraging me to continue. You know, I've lost some patrons, and I've gained some patrons over the last few months. Patrons of mine who have been supporting me for months have gone up and down and up and down, and that's fine. As your financial situation changes, or you find somebody else you'd rather support, I'm 100% behind you needing to do what's best for you. There is no expectation that just because you backed me, you should always back me, or just because you're friends, you should back me. But regardless of how much you support me financially, you should know that that means something to me. It makes me go, there are people who are willing to invest. I mean, there are people who have been with me on this platform for years now, and who have backed me at a significant amount of money. And I've got to assume that they're okay with that investment and they believe they're getting something out of it. But it encourages me that those people are willing to put their money into my pocket, which usually ends up going into somebody else's pocket. But here's what you also do for me more than once. You've paid for a prescription. You've paid for a doctor's visit. You've paid for food on the road when I'm going to a convention. You're supporting not just my works, but my life. And I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you know that some of that money goes to pay the bills. And aeons ago, in internet time, there was a bit of a kerfuffle over somebody who was using crowdfunding to support their life. To actually pay the bills. Well, I didn't understand that then. I don't understand that now. If you're supporting an author, a creator, a cartoonist, a YouTuber on these platforms, they've got to pay their bills. They've got to keep the electricity on. Thankfully, that's not as big an issue for me anymore. But still, literally, patrons' money that came out of my Patreon went into my copay for a doctor's visit this month. And that's okay for me. I hope that's okay for you. Literally, when I went to Balticon, you helped pay for food and gas, and that's okay for me. I hope that's okay for you. So this is just a little video for me to tell you what I'm doing with the money that people give me, and telling you why you should and why you shouldn't, in my opinion, support me on Patreon. I want my career to keep moving forward, and that's going to happen whether people support me or not on Patreon. But I ain't gonna lie, it's gonna go further faster if people do, because I believe in independent publishing. I also believe in traditional publishing, and I can't do either as easily or as quickly or as well without your support as I can with it. Other people have other approaches, other people have other opinions, but that's my stance on it, that's my opinion on it, and I hope that you've enjoyed this little video explaining my take on these things. If you have any comments or questions, you can send them at scott@scottroach.com. I'm posting this on YouTube as well as on my Patreon page to the public, so yeah, you can comment there as well. I'm eager to know your thoughts on any of these things I've said, and if you want to see more of these, I've got some thoughts on that as well. That's all for now, and we'll see you soon.